Why is it that people believe that enlightenment is merely a matter of a change in perspective? Uh, I just made a video, my previous video, says why it is that these great Hindu mystics believe it's merely a change in perspective. And but the interesting thing is why everyone else believes this is for a completely different reason. And so I wanted to talk about that here. It actually turns out to be very important and very relevant to the spiritual journey. So for one good reason, I think it's a good reason, is that these great Hindu mystics are saying that. And I believe it's right to give to listen to these people who've gone so far and been through so much and have so much wisdom to them, you know. And but it doesn't mean that you can't doubt them. And I found that it's not merely a matter of perspective. And when I have voiced that and explained it, and I've explained it in detail, especially in my last video, and but also I touch on it in other ways in my other videos. And so, people aren't quick to pick it up, to accept it or to inquire further into it. And so what this video is about, excuse my hoarse voice, there's a lot of pollution where I live right now. And why people, so that's one good reason to believe it, to, is that these great mystics have said it. But the other reason is much more interesting. And that is that in the egoic condition, when the consciousness, when it's structured, as I say, that the ego is a structure and a function, and when consciousness operates that way, I would consider that egoic consciousness, which is quite different than the psychological definition. We're not interested in egotistical behavior. That's totally different. Yes, it is different. And so why do people accept this so readily? And the reason is that in the egoic condition, thought and feeling is so extraordinarily intimate. It's not just intimate, but it seems to be virtually the totality of the experience of consciousness. And that is that how you see things, how you're feeling, and how you perceive things, and has enormous impact on your life and the way you feel and how you behave. And if it goes wrong, the way you see things, you can become violent, and we live in a somewhat violent world in some ways. And of course, you can be violent to yourself, It's thought and feeling is enormous. It feels as though for people in the egoic condition that they're virtually living out of it. And that is why perspective, when they say a change in perspective can have an enormous difference, it seems obvious that that would be true. And it can make a big difference. It can make a difference whether or not you kill someone or whether or not you live a better, more peaceful and compassionate life. So this is this is an enormous thing, this consciousness and perspective. And people realize that that these thoughts and feelings interfere with your perspective on life. They influence it, they form it. People are interested in questioning their perspective. And people get very, very detailed about this. I remember doing that when I was meditating in my late teens and early 20s, that you want to see reality without the influence of your prejudices, without all your reactions. And so people are looking with great detail. Because I've seen people post about it, can you see this world without all that influence of your perspective? And which is, just Krishnamurti will go into detail about it, saying it's just your thoughts from memory. We're all living out of our memories, and not encountering the world as it is. And so this seems to be a tremendously important point. And so people look as finely as they can, some of them, to see the distinction between direct perception and this influence of your thoughts, the images, and then your thoughts are shaped by your perspective, right? And that has an enormous influence on your experience of this world and your behavior in it, you see. So it that looks like the direction to go. And it turns out that's actually more a matter of psychology than it is spirituality. The actual direction in which you go spiritually is quite different, completely different direction. See, because this is all an outward thing. Of course, your thought and feelings are inward, right? But you're looking into the outer world and trying to see it without the influence of these thoughts, this inner dimension of thought and feeling. And but there's a further inward direction, and that's not basically psychological. And I think that's, for one, people can have extraordinary experiences. And when they have extraordinary experiences, also when the Kundalini comes up, you'll have these extraordinary, transcendent, experiences. And you'll have bliss and so forth, and different forms of bliss. And hopefully you're actually seeing the transcendent. I don't know why people don't talk so much of that. And but anyhow, and in these extraordinary experiences, there is a more direct encounter, but I want to talk about the way you transform permanently and what actually happens in the spiritual journey. If you see what actually happens, then we can say why that's the way to go. And what actually shows the way to go partly is when your chakras start to open. And that'll teach you something about what to do before your chakras are open too, because this will show very clearly what the spiritual direction actually is. And of course, it's the entire direction of compassion, And but anyhow, so when the chakras first start to open, people first have this Kundalini and bodily sensation, and then extraordinary experiences, and then those extraordinary experiences will open one or two chakras or something, and but I'm talking about the permanent opening of these chakras, which happens quite differently. And in fact, I think it's not the Kundalini that does it. Well, the Kundalini might first awaken them, and then my experience is that the prana is what actually pervades it when it opens. And so in my other videos, I talk a lot about the prana. The sense of life seems to be contained in this very energy. And but as the chakras start to open, first thing people are encountering, because I see a lot of it, people saying this on the internet, they encounter a lot of feelings and a lot of trauma. A lot of people have a lot of trauma, and so the opening up these chakras requires facing a lot of trauma, a lot of very difficult feelings and so forth like that. So facing these feelings is the beginning, the open of the chakras. Notice they talk about chakras opening. And why is that? Because ultimately the experience is open, one of openness in these chakras. So first you open up to those feelings, and you experience those feelings. And then what happens next is you open up into the divine, you see. So you have to go quite a ways for these to have gotten a lot of this feelings out. And not necessarily, sometimes the first time your chakra opens, you'll usually have an extraordinary experience with any of them. And spiritual, a sense of the divine and so forth like that. And, but then you will go back. I mean, the chakras are very pronounced when they're first open. And but then you're going to find out that in this human journey, you're going to encounter them all again. And you're going to have to release those feelings. And you release those feelings. This is the feeling chakra. This is the heart, which is a little different. And the will is in there. At will, and then this seems to be communication or relationship dealing with the throat, And then you have seeing and knowing or understanding, they say. And so these each open up in their own way, But it's interesting because all of the chakras seem to have some feelings associated with them. I know that if I want to get into touch with my feelings, and if I've been doing something intellectual, something demanding my attention, I might not be aware of my feelings. I just have to sink into whatever chakra it is that I'm presently balanced in. And then those feelings will be there, and then they dissipate into that peace. And really bad feelings make you, push you even further into bliss. And so that actually is telling you something about the journey. The way these chakras open. It tells you that you want to encounter each and every dimension of your consciousness. Every dimension of yourself as a human being is going to have the divine below it. And if you want to fully open up as a human being to that divine, you're going to open up all these chakras. And because those are the dimensions of consciousness. And so they open up. So that's the path to take before it. Open up your feelings. Open up to your human experience. There's nothing, if it's a change in perspective, it's all in their intellect, right? That's what a perspective is. Of course, then they think you see the world differently, and they think you come upon this perspective by seeing, what the reality is, But that's not the direction spirituality actually takes you in. It won't take you in that direction. You'll only get so far if you're only changing your perspective. Even if you're seeing it, you see. That's using this up here. And people like to use that up there. It's so much easier than facing your feelings. And then you can say, this and that. You can explain non-duality. You can explain things better than the Hindu mystics. I see it all the time on the internet. People explaining things better than the Hindu mystics. Explaining their stuff better than they do. Now, I've explained things that are different than what the Hindus are saying, you see. But in most of my videos, in the topic of what is the ego. But people are explaining what the Hindus are saying better than the Hindus can say it. Because, they're so focused on getting it right, changing their perspective, getting that right perspective. But that's not the actual spiritual journey. In fact, it can be an enormous distraction. Because what you really want to do is open up yourself completely as a human being. And for that, the most important thing is just to, I think, is to sit with all that, really open up to it. And I think that'll make it easier to open up to have the Kundalini and all the chakras open up. And some people, I'm aware, will sit in front of the Eucharist, and something divine, and focus on that. And I think that's good too. Because so let me continue with how this journey goes. Because so far what I've said doesn't capture where you want to go. So you open up in these chakras and counter feelings, and then eventually you'll counter the divine. Eventually you'll be able to live in that dimension, aware all the time of the divine, you see. And I am, as long as I'm not engaged with something intellectually, overly focused on something. And but otherwise, I'm aware of it. And so now this direction, now remember, the divine can't be seen because it'll be a seeing experience, but you won't actually see anything because the divine is formless. God is not some created thing, and it is the source of creation, not some created thing. And and notice the Hindus go in this direction. They go into these samadhis, you see. And in samadhi, you're not aware of anything, you see. And they have, you go far enough into this where you're not aware of anything, This happens to a lot of the mystics, and they're not aware of anything at all, outward at all, you see. Whereas people are trying to, in the egoic state, your tendency is going to be to want to, or at least if you've been influenced by the idea that it's perspective or something, or some insight to be had. But there's no insight like that to be had. It's trivial, It's just in the realm of how you see and think about things. It's not in the direction of the divine. And the Hindus, you see, are moving in the right direction. They are moving into that pure consciousness, is what they want to call it, where you're in such a deep state of samadhi that you don't see anything at all. And they push that to its limits. You see, but that's opening you out to the divine. And the divine is nothing you can see, you see. It's a different direction. It's a direction of openness, more than a direction of perception. It's not even perception. It's at the root of consciousness. Because, like I said, each of these dimensions opens up into the divine, in their own human way, because it's the human body these chakras are in, and opening up to your human consciousness, you see. And but actually, I used to make a little diagram of it where I had a circle. I used Bernadette Roberts' idea of a circle and an empty hole inside, where the emptiness is actually the transcendent, or she would say God, the divine. And the paper is the consciousness, you see, is all of your experience. Well, I once put the different chakras around the outside to show that when you go in the depth of any of them, you're encountering that one divine. So that although you have different experiences, when each of these open up to the divine, they're all opening up to the root of consciousness, to the depth of consciousness, that singular center, you see, of the divine. And that's why they say it's your center, you know, it's also the, and so, so that's what you're aiming toward, is actually this divine transcendent. And like, now what Nisargadatta says, you see, in his book, Consciousness and the Absolute, the last talks of Nisargadatta. I don't know how much it is in his other books, because that's the only one I read completely. And but he's quite clear that first you anchor yourself into this self. And for him, and he says it clearly, self is consciousness. He doesn't make it one object, one particular thought you're having of an individual self. When he mentions this, he says self is consciousness, you see? And Bernadette Roberts says the same thing. Consciousness is self. And she explains in detail in her circle diagram. If you put Bernadette Roberts in Google, you can come to her circle diagram, or put it in YouTube, where she goes through all that. And so this is going, that's in different, in inward direction, beyond the psychological direction of thought and feeling, out into the divine through the whole of consciousness, you see. It's going to that one center. Even though you have all these centers, it's going to that one center of consciousness. And so the Hindus have gone, you see, all the way there. And but as soon as you reach the absolute limit of one thing, you come upon something else. And I've had an experience of that. And that's something not just aware of consciousness, aware of the absolute, because the absolute, you know, or God can affect your consciousness, right? And you'll have an experience. And, I don't want to go into all that. I think this is what I wanted to say in this video. I have other videos, you see, is why people adhere so strongly to the idea that it's a matter of perspective. Because in the egoic state, this perspective is enormous. And it's virtually the entirety of your consciousness. You feel you're living out of thought, feeling, and perspective, you see. But after you go through this transformation of consciousness, where the structure of the ego is undone, and your chakras are open, the more open they are, the more you are not resting on consciousness, because this consciousness opens out into the divine, out beyond consciousness. See, that's the whole point, is to open up in that direction. So there's basically two directions. There's inward direction and this more outward direction, which includes perspective, thought, perception. You see, it includes perception. And so disentangling your perspective from your perception might seem really important in the egoic state. But once these chakras are more fully open, you'll realize that there's another direction that solves all of the psychological problems. Because once these chakras are open, any psychological thing that goes and affects the feelings or the will goes out into the divine. Pure peace. You can never, never be deeply hurt again. And ultimately you want to take the journey back to God, you see. So that's what it's all about. And, all right, so that's what I wanted to say here.